Alright, what is up? I gotta talk about the Iran situation. I haven't had anybody to talk to for like, I don't know, a week. I've had basically all my family's been out of town. Um, and I've basically had no one to talk to since then, so yeah. Anyways, it's just a Code 3 replay in the background. But anyway, um so first off, like, let me be transparent. Like, I don't advocate for anything the Ayatollah has ever done. That regime is disgusting, and a lot of the shit that they've had happen to them, they've had coming for decades, right? Um, and I am happy for the Iranian people, but I have to preface this by saying it feels like a betrayal um, when it comes to what Trump claimed was his platform before the 2024 election. This feels like a pretty big betrayal for, I think, people who believed that we were moving away from interventionist policies, and he even criticized Kamala Harris um, in that case. And obviously, I think Kamala Harris is a terrible candidate. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But regardless, we're not going to get into that. But um, this is just really, really disappointing, and I guess I shouldn't be that surprised. This is, I mean, it's been trending this way for a while. Um, I figured at some point the GOP establishment would kind of take control again. Um, and yeah, it's just unfortunate. I don't understand why, and I get that the U.S. military obviously is the best force to overthrow the Iranian regime. Obviously, they're the best force to do it in terms of how effective they'd be able to do it. Obviously, but this is just something that, to me, I don't understand why the U.S. has to be the one to, and this is the case every fucking time with everything. Why does the U.S. always have to be the force that has to initiate all of this? I just don't understand. Um, and this feels almost crazy to say this, but in a way, why can't, when it comes to foreign policy, why can't the U.S. be more like China, where they don't really invest in direct conflicts? At most, they fund proxies. And I'm not saying we should, our government should be like the Chinese government at all. Of course not. No shit. But I just don't understand. I think I do know the reasoning. I know a lot of people will claim it's a national security thing, um, that Iran has nuclear capabilities, Iran has a nuclear weapon, that's why. Um, and I'm going to basically question that in two ways. I'm going to say, one, so why were operations launched last year? And after those operations were launched, multiple people came out and stated that we had basically destroyed most of the Iranian nuclear program. So did that not actually happen, or what? So, because why were those claims made, but then it seems like none of that was true. So I don't really understand. Um, yeah, I don't really get it. Two, and I'm obviously I don't want the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon. The Iranian regime to have a nuclear weapon. Obviously they're extremely dangerous. But I will preface this by saying, how does the Iranians having a nuke, how does that concern the United States? The U.S. has the capability to destroy it easily if it was ever shot at the United States. And also, the other thing is, okay, And people will say, well, we have military bases over there. And then my question to you again is, why? Why are we over there? Once again. The other thing is, okay, obviously it's a threat to the Israelis. But again, why aren't they the one, they're obviously capable of dealing with this situation. They have tons of US military equipment. For God's sakes, we spend more money on them than any other foreign country. Okay? And I think I've probably said this before, but it concerns them far more. Of course, Iran having a nuclear weapon concerns them far more. And people will say, well, what if they sneak a nuclear weapon into the United States? Okay, that's why you don't have open borders. It's pretty simple. That's why you do not have open borders. That is one reason. But the other thing is, okay, with logic like that, then why didn't the Chinese sneak a nuclear weapon in during the Biden administration? I mean, you know, you can play this what-if game, and not to say that it's impossible, but that is why you actually pay attention to your borders and actually, you know, enforce your laws, right? The other thing, on the political side of things, is I don't understand why it seems like the GOP is willing to sacrifice the midterms and potentially 2028 just to free the Iranian people, okay? I don't understand it. And again, not to say that I don't, you know, I don't believe the Iranian people should be free, but again, why does the United States have to be the country to do all the heavy lifting? It's always the case. Let's be brutally honest. That has always been the case with every conflict that has happened in the last 70 plus years. Okay, that has always been the case. Pretty much. Since every post-World War II conflict, it has been the United States doing the heavy lifting in every situation. And not to say that every war that we've been involved in we should have ever even been involved in. I think the majority we shouldn't have. But why is this always the case? Why is every other country incapable of acting on anything ever? I don't get it. And why do we have a president who will be very critical of countries, right, for not spending anything on military, basically utilizing the US military as their own defense, okay? Essentially, our tax dollars are going towards defending other countries, okay? And whether or not you agree with that or not is irrelevant, because I'm making the point that we have a president who is very critical of that, but at the same time continues to do things that contradict that. Continues to spend money on Israel. Okay? I don't get why Israel gets an exception. I don't understand. Is it a religious thing? I don't get it. People keep claiming they give us some military advantage in the Middle East. I don't understand what that is. I don't know. What, are they a landing ground for if we wanted to invade on, you know, through a ground invasion? I don't understand militarily how that, like, what they have that helps us. Okay? The other thing is, what does Israel produce that helps the United States in return? Very little, if anything. Okay? And this isn't coming across as I hate Jewish people, or I hate Israel, or I think Israel should be destroyed, or any of that. This isn't anti-Israeli. It's more anti-Netanyahu, anti-interventionist politics, or geopolitics. It's just ridiculous to me, right? It's just such a two-faced sort of thing, and I've gotten very frustrated lately with anybody that sort of called this out, right? Anybody that sort of said, how is this an America First sort of policy, right? How can you claim this is an America First policy, and then basically any person that that criticize this, what you do is you say they have Trump derangement syndrome, which is complete bullshit because a lot of these people have voted for Trump. It's, multiple times even. Okay? So don't use that as an insult because it's just fucking retarded. Okay? 2, you'll have people say Israel derangement syndrome. That's the new one. Israel derangement syndrome. Whenever you criticize Israel on anything, it's you must be deranged. Because why would you ever criticize the Israeli government? Oh my god. Right? It's this refusal to accept criticism. And don't think the left is above this, because that's their whole MO, right? That's what the left does. The left does the same thing as well, obviously. It's all they do is slander anyone that criticizes them. They don't ever address the actual policy, okay? If the United States wanted to give the Israelis intelligence, right, to help them deal with Iranian targets, fine. I think with the Iranians obviously attacking numerous countries in the Middle East in response, I think it's very possible that regardless of if the U.S. was involved or not, they would have done this anyway, but if the Israelis hit them, it's very possible that other Middle Eastern... I mean, I've already seen the Kurds, the Iraqi Kurds, are already getting involved, they're already getting involved in this as well. So I'm pretty sure most of the Middle East is already turning against the Iranians, as is, right now. The Iranian regime. I have to keep specifying that, because people are going to keep, you'll have some MAGA person being like, oh my god, and MAGA's not really MAGA anymore, let's be brutally honest. MAGA is now a GOP establishment talking point, but whatever. We're not going to get into that right now. They'll say, oh, are you justifying the regime? They'll attack you with every bullshit straw man argument. The left does the same thing. I just love that, there's a lot of people on the right as of late that have been doing the same tactics the left does, and they claim they're above that, which is horseshit. But anyway, most of the Middle East is turning against the Iranian regime right now, as is. And obviously their leader is dead. They've had some people try to replace him. Usually they get knocked down. But we have more money going towards that. And as I've seen recently, it looks like we have more, money going towards this war effort, essentially. And unfortunately, it's more taxpayer money. At what point are we going to reduce our global footprint a little bit? Or at least reduce it so that we're focusing mainly on our borders in the northern hemisphere that actually concerns us, as opposed to fighting on the other side of the planet? And we've already had multiple military personnel die here. Obviously, the Iranians have lost way more than everybody else. The IRGC has. But we've put our people in harm's way, and multiple have died because of it. And that's something they're going to have to answer for. And again, I'm not justifying the butcher of Iranian civilians. I mean, it's fucking terrible. It's disgusting. And I said that it's not justified and it's gross. And, the Iranian regime is a prime example of why a theocracy is bad. But, I'm just so black-pilled with all this shit. It doesn't matter. All of it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you vote for. It's irrelevant. The two parties have the same goals in the end. They may have different policy, but the end goal is the same. It's whatever benefits them, right? Or makes them look good. In some cases, it's moral grandstanding. I know. I think in this case here, MAGA's going to use the Iranian situation as a moral grandstanding, where they're going to say, look, we freed the Iranian people, look at us, right? Look at how good we are, right? I'm really hoping this ends well, and that ideally whatever regime takes over is friendly to the West and that we can have a harmonious relationship. Because if this ends up like Iraq, where a vacuum is created and then essentially a new terroristic regime or organization takes over, this is going to look horrendous, and it's going to be a massive waste of money, time, lives, once again. I get deja vu with this shit, man, and I get there hasn't been any, and I keep saying there's no ground forces, but I suspect eventually that's going to have to happen. Now, if it does, will it end up being American boots? I don't know. Probably not, but I say probably. I don't think there's it's a non-zero chance, which is still worrying to me. And I'm going to be honest, the IRGC is going to just dig in at a certain point, right? They're just going to go underground. They're going to dig as far down as they can, and they're going to hide. They're going to basically treat this sort of like how the Viet Cong treated the Vietnam War, where they're basically going to hide, and they're going to wait for somebody to come get them. And that's when they're going to fight back. Because they know they have no chance in a straight-up war. Sort of like the NVA and the Viet Cong. Where they know in a straight-up fight they will be destroyed easily. Okay? So they're going to do that. So somebody's going to have to go in to get them. Who is that going to be? In a vacuum, it should be the IDF. But it won't be. I know it won't be. So who is it going to be? It'll probably be some other country, right? That'll have to go in. Once again, the IDF will avoid responsibility, even though, you know, generally, and not to say I hate all, again, I hate all IDF, but I think Netanyahu is corrupt as fuck, and I don't even think he does what's best for Israel in a lot of cases. And I think he pretty consistently exploits his wartime powers that he gets as prime minister. So who's going to go in to get them, right? Who is going to go in? Because I think the Iranians very quickly are going to realize they stand no chance. I think they already probably realized that. In you know, a couple days, it was probably like, oh yeah, there's no way. You know, the U.S. doesn't even have to put forces on the ground to easily crush us. So we have no chance. So what they'll say is, all right, we're going to put ourselves in a position where we're going to force you to have to put boots on the ground to fully destroy us, right? If you want to fully destroy us and be able to fully take control of the country, okay? And it's just so frustrating to me because I know this money could go to people here to help people here. There's too many people struggling here for this shit to be happening. It's ridiculous. On top of the fact, this is risking... I mean, I already think the midterms are lost at this point. I already do. Ultimately, affordability hasn't really been fully addressed in a lot of cases. And, you know, corporate greed hasn't been addressed in a lot of cases as well. We continue to have... I mean, the tech industry is a prime example of monopolies ruining markets. And this is happening in numerous industries. Antitrust laws just don't seem to be followed anymore. I mean, I don't have any trust. I have no trust in institutions now. I have in none of them, basically. And with all the fraud, with just the debt, the amount of spending, it doesn't go down no matter who's in office. It doesn't matter who claims they're going to cut budgets. Or not even cut the budget, but just reduce spending. Because nobody's doing it. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Third party can't do anything. Nobody votes third party, even if they're unhappy. It doesn't matter. The country is basically run by two political cults, as is. And there's not much anybody can really do about it. We can't vote our way out of this. Unless people vote third party, but even then, The two parties are so entrenched. They work together to actively stifle third party in every case they can. And it just doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm very black-pilled on a lot of stuff at this point. I know that basically nothing works as it should. Everything is fucking corrupt. It's just... It would take me literally hours if I explained every horrendous thing that is basically taking control in the last 10 to 15 years. It's just so unfortunate. But and America's been declining for a long time. I'm not to say that it's a new thing, right? America's been declining for the last 50 plus years. This has been problems that have been, you know, rotting the country away over long periods. I'm just at the point now where it's like, you know, do you vote Democrat and vote for acceleration theory and destroy the country faster, or do you vote Republican and let the country rot away and watch it wither away and die over time? Neither is good. What do you do? What do you even do? There's nothing you can do. That's it. That's just how it is. There's no getting around it. And I just don't really know where to go from here, to be honest. I don't see what there is to do. You have people that are in the right and the left have the same problem, where if you're not lockstep with who they want you to be lockstep with, guess what? You get flattened. They call you a traitor, they insult you, they say you're a terrible person, they insult your intelligence, you know. It's just the slander comes out immediately, right? Every 2 seconds. You have all these people who claim they're tolerant, they listen to other opinions, but they don't. They don't. They don't. Anytime they hear a different opinion, it's just met with immediate anger and insults. They're all the same. Everybody's the same. I think it's because everybody's so politically fucking brain rotted, but it is what it is. Yeah, I'm just getting deja vu, because we've literally gone nowhere. We've literally gone nowhere. I think we've learned very little, it seems like. And I think it's on purpose, obviously. The status quo must be maintained for the boomers. They don't really care about anybody else other than themselves. This is obvious information, right? And it's not all boomers, obviously. But I'm saying the ones in power, that's how they are. They prioritize themselves over everyone else, even their children. They're probably the first generation to do that, to be honest, which is impressive, but it is what it is. It's just crazy that like, the shit that people have called me on the internet over completely common sense stuff, you know? Stuff that basically everyone would have agreed with 10 years ago now is not common sense anymore. I don't know. And the thing that's weird is it's not that people don't have the same values in a lot of cases, but it's this tribalism. It's this us versus them. I was thinking about making a meme, a picture of like a T-800 from Terminator, you know, taking maybe a screenshot from one of the future war scenes in those films, and taking like a T-800 that's holding like the 2 plasma rifles and labeling the T-800 as a politician and labeling each plasma rifle as left wing and right wing, because that's really what it is. These politicians, that's all they do. They weaponize everybody against each other, and it's worked. It's worked perfectly. Nobody wants to de-escalate anything. It's all just inflammatory shit. I just don't support any of this shit. And as somebody who's like a centrist, and I try to be as common sense as I can be, and I don't give a shit where a policy comes from. I don't care if it's left wing or right wing. I just want what's best for the most people. And it's just unfortunate that that being a populist, you get crushed now for it, which is wild, because it used to not be that way, but yeah. This is pretty much the worst timeline to be a centrist in, I think. It really is. It's also a terrible timeline to have any sort of libertarian values as well. Horrendous timeline for that, also. Um, Especially as somebody who I would consider, at least on social issues, I lean libertarian, but whatever. I'll play one more replay, because I'm not done ranting yet. But I just want this as something in the background, right? Something to look at. Okay. So anyway, it's just the amount of like friendships I've seen destroyed over this stuff. I just want peace. That's really all it is. Is it that much to ask? I just want harmony. That's it. I don't care anymore, dude. I'll be friends with anybody that doesn't want my head on a pike. That's really it. That's all I really am asking for at this point in time, right? Um, you know, and it's sad, but it's just the reality of it, and I can't do anything about it, but it's just I have so little faith now that it's like why bother putting in tons of work and effort and blood, sweat and tears into anything, because a lot of it's not probably not going to matter in the end. And I know it's doomer and I know it's nihilistic, but for me, I consider it to be realism, right? Like I consider myself to be a realist, and I think people keep saying, people, that kind of think like me keep saying, "Oh, you're a doomer. You're not, you know." But then things keep happening that just prove us right. All this stuff that was considered conspiracy, right? 5, 10 years ago, a lot of this stuff is real. With the Epstein stuff, people thought that was a conspiracy, not real. You know, I mean, I want to know, like, I'm genuine, like, how many pedophiles are in the U.S. government? I mean, it's crazy to me, like how many pedophiles are actually in the U.S. government? I'm genuinely curious. But I just keep seeing this sort of tactic from politicians to try and cause, do something to sort of take attention off of things, trying to exploit people's short attention spans in the modern day and hoping they just forget about other things. But yeah, it's just all this stuff. I wish it wasn't real. I really do. I genuinely wish it wasn't real or wasn't true. In a lot of these cases, I'm hoping to be proved wrong. I really do. I would be so happy to be wrong and be proven wrong on a lot of this stuff. Believe me, I would sleep better at night if that was the case. But that's just not the case. And I've kind of had to realize that it doesn't matter how respectful you are to people with stuff. Even if you respect their views, even if you don't agree, even if you treat them well, it doesn't matter, because most people aren't willing to give you that decency back. So don't expect it. Don't expect it, because it's just not the reality. trying to think. What else? What the other thing I was gonna say? Yeah. It's wild to me that the GOP is willing to toss the midterms. And I'm not going to say that they've tossed 2028, but it's depending on how things go, it's possible. Yeah. It's basically summed up to me that nobody cares. Nobody in power cares about Americans. Nobody gives a shit. Everybody just likes virtue signaling in politics. That's like the biggest tactic from everybody, left or right. It's all identity politics now. Nobody wants to treat any other people like humans. It's just how it is. And it's just human nature, I think, ultimately. That's kind of what's come out. I think social media has kind of proven human nature is what it is. I think there's a lot of stuff that has been hidden for a long time. And I think a lot of people think, oh, things have gotten worse recently, but things have been getting worse for a long time. It's just a lot of it's been hidden. I kind of think of it like the Matrix, where everybody's been asleep for a long time, and now that people wake up, it's caused people to kind of lose their minds in a lot of cases, I think. And unfortunately, I think it's caused a lot of spirals from a lot of people. And it's been really bad in general. And I don't really blame anybody. I think it's just manipulative tactics from tons of different people. And, in a way, I don't blame people for being indoctrinated. Because I think people, especially now, aren't taught to be critical thinkers. And I think people are so hell-bent on just being part of a group that they're willing to sell their soul and sell out to do so. And it's just kind of human nature. It's hard to sort of fight against that, I think. And regarding Iran, right now that's obviously affecting gas prices, at least here in the U.S. It probably is everywhere else, too. The U.S. continues to be reliant on fossil fuels from the Middle East, which doesn't make any sense to me since we have plenty here. Sure, the U.S. could work something out with Alberta, but instead of doing that, we'd rather hold grudges against each other and not cooperate and not try to make things work. Because why would you ever do that? Why would you ever compromise on anything, right? Why not just, mutually assured destruction, right? That works. That's such a great idea. That would, that's just so good for the world, guys. It's just so good. It's just such a great way of thinking. It's just so logical. But it's just every counter argument I've seen towards this on the left and the right, it just doesn't make sense. And it's like, I don't know. There's just so many echo chambers everywhere. I know it's like, I feel so disrespected when people claim that, like, I don't know. And I get it. It's anonymous people. I shouldn't care what they say, obviously. But it's just frustrating shit, because I try to actively avoid that shit, right? I try to look at all viewpoints on things. I try to... Because to me, how can you argue against something if you don't even know what you're arguing against? That's why people use strawman arguments, because they don't know their opponent's argument. They don't know what they're arguing against even, so they have to make up what they're arguing against because they have no information, no research. They didn't look into any of it, right? But when I have people tell me that I'm in the echo chamber, it's just wild. It's just wild. Nowadays, it's everything is you're far left or far right for having any opinion that disagrees with anything. And it's just how it is, unfortunately. And anybody that's tried to speak out against this just gets crushed or censored or whatever. I think a lot of people don't actually hold... their views aren't their actual views. They just say what they think sounds the best, or what sounds good to say. They don't actually feel that way. It's just, again, sort of a... They want to look virtuous. But I think virtue is something a lot of people... And humility is something a lot of people lack. Accountability is basically nobody has it now. Very few people will... The majority of people, at least on social media, will never take accountability when they fuck up for anything. And, yeah, there's just not a lot to really say. It's just, there's certain traits that you can label most politicians with. Not to say every politician is inherently evil, but unfortunately the vast majority of them are extremely selfish. And they do not care who they have to step on. It's the same way with corporations. A lot of these large corporations, they don't care who they have to stomp over or crush. They don't even consider them people that they have to crush. Whatever. They don't care. They see people as numbers, that's it. And there's no accountability from top to bottom. Everywhere. People just can't admit fault. And I'm not going to say I'm perfect. Obviously, I'm not. And I've fallen into traps at multiple times and done stupid shit in my life, 100%. And I've done some of the things I've gotten frustrated about, right? But you have to have some self-reflection. Like, you have to have some critical thinking. You have to actually reflect on what you do in your life. You can't just sit there and... It's like an ego thing. It's an insecurity thing. I think people are hurting. I think people, like, feel bad, generally. So it comes off as being defensive or being egotistical. But I think a lot of it is insecurity, because people are upset and they're depressed, and a lot of people have given up hope on a lot of things. And I think for some people, picking a team makes them feel hopeful. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of people kind of ignore reality when it comes to that. And I don't know what to do. And, I mean, you know, it's one of those things where... Regardless of you know, of what I try to do, you know, you always get people always claim you're far right, far left, radical. It is what it is. And I keep saying that, but it's just... I can't accept it. I can't accept it. Because it's just not the way it should be. It's just not. I've struggled with that for years now. I've struggled with that for years and years. Probably even the last 10 years of my life, that has been something that I can't... I've really fought hard to try and cope, but... I have periods where I just can't, unfortunately. Take a shot every time I say that. But unfortunately, oh my god, I said it again. Jesus. I sound like the apparently kid. Uh, I guess having standards nowadays is not an acceptable thing. And being critical of things is, I guess, too harsh. Even if the criticism is constructive and it's not done out of to be malicious or to be mean. It's just to try to make things better. That's where it comes from. It comes from a place of growth. It doesn't come from anger or hate. That's not what it is. But it doesn't really matter. I think the media, I think politicians, big companies, they've all won. They've won. They've won. They've managed to turn everybody against themselves, separate everybody into small groups by everything, by religion, race, creed, location, country. They've all won. They've all won. Everybody hates each other. You know. I think, unfortunately, society is going to collapse economically and socially before there's ever a revolution, And I think a revolution, unfortunately, is what has to happen. And I don't want that to be the case. But I think it's going to get to a point where the government's going to have to be overthrown because otherwise nothing's going to change. And I'm scared to see how that goes because the government they have the police, they have the military, and not to say that all these groups will go along with the government, or these big companies telling them what to do. Not to say that all these people will go along with it. But the people that do, they can inflict a lot of damage on a lot of people. I'm somebody that I respect the military. I respect people who serve. I respect it. But the U.S. military kind of scares me at this point, that they're able to go in and inflict massive losses on an enemy without ever even having to put a single vehicle, infantryman. They don't have to do any of that. Don't have to do any of that. They don't have to put a single boot on the ground in a place to inflict absurdly heavy losses on an enemy. And I just think, what if that gets used against people, even people here? Not to say that they would win in the long run, but because they wouldn't. But the amount of loss, the loss of life that could be inflicted would be catastrophic, I would say. And it's unfortunate these service members are dying for a cause that ultimately doesn't really, I think, benefit Americans. I think Megyn Kelly said that some of these service members are kind of, in a way, dying for Israel, and people started attacking that statement by saying, oh, you're disrespecting the service members, saying that they died in an American uniform. And it's not disrespect. It's not. It's a tragedy. That's what it actually is. It's a tragedy. It is. I feel the same way about those who died in Vietnam, Iraq. Involvement in other... I mean, I'm not even... I'm sure there's involvement in tons of other things that we don't even know about because it's been hidden. It's a tragedy. That's what it is. In reality, it's not their fault, and their service is still honorable regardless. But it's just a tragedy that they're dying for another country that doesn't appreciate them. and doesn't care about their loss. And it's not that and I'm talking predominantly the Israeli government. But, and again, I'll be called anti-Semitic for saying that, and whatever. Just complete horseshit. I do not care. Like, I'm not against the U.S. being allied with Israel. I'm not going to get into Gaza because that's just a fucking horrible, ugly situation, any way you slice it. But the U.S. wants to be allied with Israel, fine. But this relationship where they get everything and we get nothing is ridiculous. And it's just so hypocritical from the current administration to criticize other countries for that, which I agree. I think other countries also should be more appreciative of the U.S. spending money on them for defense, because in reality, I probably wouldn't even care. I don't know. I probably wouldn't even bother in some cases. Because again, I feel like if it doesn't affect the United States, and it's selfish. It's probably selfish to say that. It probably is, and it sounds terrible. I know it does. But it doesn't come from... It doesn't come from, like, a mean or malicious sort of attitude. It's more of that people here are suffering and dying. We have so much violence in our inner cities. We have so many health healthcare problems. We have people that are just suffering so many chronic illnesses, autoimmune problems. The average quality of life is dropping in this country substantially. And we just have... We have so much suffering in places, so much poverty in places. Why can't we focus on that? I don't get why. I don't get why. Not to say that we can't ever help other countries again. Or that we can't be allied, or, you know, if a country really needs us. But that is not the case here. People are treating this like it's Korea, where, you know, South Korea was on the verge of being completely consumed by North Korea. This is not the same. I've seen people compare the Iranian regime or the Iranian military to the Nazis, which is ridiculous. The Iranians do not control all of the Middle East or something. There was a point in time where the Nazis controlled almost all of Europe, and a big chunk of North Africa. The Iranians are not in that position. They are not. And militarily, they are a fucking joke as well. I mean, they would lose if they tried to invade Iraq right now. They would lose. They couldn't win a war in the 80s against the Iraqis. They fought for 8 years to a stalemate. So, this idea that they're like some massive threat that they're going to consume all of the Middle East, I mean, it's just ridiculous to me. And not to say that they're not a threat to countries in the Middle East or, you know, in other places. But again, the countries that it concerns need to be the ones that act. Period. There's this bullshit idea, right? That, you know, if we don't act, Iran is the next, you know, Nazi Germany, where we're going to have to deal with them eventually, right? And, well, I acknowledge that could be the case. Again, I want somebody to answer the question, why can't the Israelis and other countries in the Middle East, why can't they do this? I mean, it's already looking like that's going to be the case, that other countries, you know, the Saudis, potentially other countries are going to get involved in this conflict, potentially. And hopefully that speeds it up and that it's done soon. I really hope so. Hope it's over as quick as possible. I really do. I really don't want this to drag on. For the sake of the Iranian people, but also for our people over there and other people as well over there. Believe it or not, just because I'm anti-interventionist doesn't mean I'm anti-conflict, but I see it as a last resort, and I see it as something when you can't work out anything. And I get it. I get that there was at one point a deal that was trying to be made, but the fact that there was even an expectation that the Iranians were going to dissolve the nuclear program was foolish. Obviously, they see that as their means to keep power. So why would they get rid of a program that allows them to stay in power over their population, right? And it's not good. It's obviously horrible, but logically that it makes sense. But that's not something we have a lot of nowadays, it seems. And I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend to know everything, and it's just a perspective from what I've seen and how I've tried to piece things together in a logical manner. And there's things that I probably am wrong on, but I don't think you can help others until you help yourself. I think that's how life is. If you're in a really bad state, it's very hard to help other people when you're suffering yourself. And sometimes you have to prioritize yourself over others. And that's just life. And it's not selfishness. It's not selfishness. Because it doesn't mean you don't care about other people. It just means that sometimes you need help yourself. And I don't know where to go from here. I had some hope. That maybe the U.S. could go back in the right direction, but it's not going to happen, unfortunately. Not under the current two parties, and nothing's going to change, and that's just reality. It doesn't matter what laws get passed, because when nobody is held accountable to actually follow them, it doesn't matter. You can pass every law in the book, but if nobody is like I said, if nobody is ever prosecuted for breaking those laws, if those laws aren't upheld, why even have them at that point? The problem with society is that it's everybody else has to follow laws, but specific groups of people and people in power, they don't. It's anarchy in their case. There is no rules for them, because apparently they are just so much better than everybody else, right? They're just so much smarter, so much more valuable. It's the same way, I mean, in this country, we don't value the right things. And not to say that, people shouldn't be able to make a living playing sports or being a politician. But we do not value important jobs. We do not value people who help others. We do not value difficult work. We value meaningless stuff that in reality doesn't mean shit. And I don't know how society is supposed to heal until that changes. I really don't. And it's just, it's sickening seeing the arrogance from a lot of these people in these positions of power, these wealthy CEOs, these politicians that are making tons of money off of insider trading, and they're playing the stock market. They're exploiting markets, destroying markets for their own gain. I saw earlier today Jensen Huang of the NVIDIA CEO basically bragging about the fact that his company destroyed the market by selling tons of their, AI GPUs to data centers, driving up the price of memory, driving up the price of basically all forms of memory storage, GPUs. Basically destroying the market for every other person, every small business, destroying it for everybody. And he openly comes out all smug and basically says, while supply has been bad, it's been great for us. Yeah, obviously it's been great for you. You fucking ruined the entire market, you piece of shit. You corporatist cunt. I'm actually a capitalist. And I hate it when I call out corporatism and I call out this idea of corporatism and that it's bad for most people. I get called a communist, a socialist. I get called all this shit. No, I'm an actual capitalist. I actually believe in a true capitalist society. I believe in a true free market, not this market that is controlled by a few groups of people and no one else. I believe in small business. I believe in competition. I don't believe in the taxpayer having to having to subsidize everything. I don't believe in the taxpayer having to subsidize big companies in cases where they make bad decisions and fuck up and blow money and make awful business decisions. And that's all we see now. We see this all over the place with big companies. Who are the people running this shit? Do these people have any common sense? Where did they get their business degree? Is it made up? Is their degree made up? Like, can any monkey go to business school now and get a degree in marketing or in business? I mean, has it gotten that bad? Because some of the decisions that I see these companies make are mind-boggling. And in some cases, okay, it's to make money, but in other cases, it actually kills their bottom line. But because they have so much money, they don't care if they fuck up, and lose tons of money because they're so greedy. Or in a lot of cases, they don't care. They're so anti-customer that it's the people that build their companies up and have allowed them to get to the size they're at. They don't give a shit about you. They walk over you. They spit on you, despite what you do to help them. It does not matter. They do not care. They don't see you as people. They do not give a shit. And it's in a lot of cases we have no choice. There's no choice. There's choice on the meaningless stuff. I think George Carlin put this perfectly. He said there's choice on the stuff that doesn't matter, but on stuff that does matter, we have very little. And you have no choice. In a lot of markets, there's 2 or 3 companies running everything, and they're all fucking scum. They're all fucking dredges. They are all lizard people who do not care what happens to anybody. They would gladly replace every fucking person with AI. Gladly. They would gladly replace every person if they could with AI. And it would not make them feel bad at all. And they don't believe, obviously they don't believe in, they would gladly do that, and then they're not going to pay more taxes to support people that they knock out of work, by their decisions, or, they replace them with AI. Have you guys noticed a trend that when you have a large company, every time they make terrible decisions and lose money, which funnily enough, in a lot of cases, it's not really that they lose money. It's that their profit margins are slightly lower than they were before, or their stock slightly goes down. It's not that the company is doing bad. They're still making hand over fist. It's just they're not making as much hand over fist. Okay? Have you noticed that in every case, right, where a company maybe loses money on something or something doesn't work out, notice how the people at the top are never held accountable, but it's always the people below them, right? It's the same people that are in a lot of cases, these big companies, they have crazy high turnover, but it like doesn't even matter because they basically create slop. They create whatever they can for the lowest possible price. They will go anywhere necessary to make something for the lowest possible price. They don't care what rules they have to exploit or abuse to do that. They don't care who they have to abuse. They will do it. They want to cut corners as much as humanly fucking possible. And then they want to be unreasonable in a lot of cases, with pricing. They want to claim that it's necessary. Inflation, these companies love inflation because that allows them to have an excuse to raise prices. heavily. But the thing is, they're often hoping that people don't pay attention to the amount of inflation. So what they'll do, right, is in cases, let's say there's, I don't know, let's say over the course of a year, right, there is 10% inflation, okay? What they'll do is say, oh, we have to raise prices because 10% inflation, but then they'll raise it 20%. And they're hoping that nobody actually looks into how much inflation there was, okay? They hope nobody looks into it because once you do, you realize that they're price gouging and that they didn't have to raise the price by 20%, but they're choosing to do it anyway because they think people are going to put up with it. They think they are. I mean, we see this constantly in tons of different markets. I mean, look at fast food right now. Look at that. We have fast food prices, and even in the last 5 years, there's a lot of fast food that has doubled or more in price. And it's not like we've had over 100% inflation. Yes, we've had a lot of inflation. I'm not going to say that we haven't had a lot. We've had upwards of 50+%. But these things should not be doubling in price. That is ridiculous. That is fucking bullshit. And it's not like people are making double the money. Obviously, they're not. Obviously, that's not the case. Okay? But none of these companies ever get in trouble. Nobody ever gets called out. Nothing happens. It's silence. And the US government, their duty is to protect the people of this country from threats domestic and abroad. Okay? And I don't think people acknowledge that some of these corporations are a threat to people domestically. They are. I don't know why people think we'll give these companies slack because, oh, they're an American company. Bitch, they're not an American company. Most of the people that work for them are overseas. And it's nothing against those people, but you know why they're doing that, right? It's so they can pay them less money. They can exploit wages, they can exploit laws in other countries. Why do you think India and China are two countries that a lot of big companies hire from? Because they don't have to pay them a reasonable wage. They can get away with paying them less. Why do you think H-1B visas are such a big thing? Because they can often get away with paying less and they can hold that over people's heads. They can say, oh, if you're unhappy with what you're getting paid, well, we can just revoke your visa and then you go back, right? Why? Why is that? Why is it okay? This exploitation of labor is fucking disgusting, and it's been happening here, it's been happening abroad. I hate to say it, but people have been, and this is vulgar, but at least economically, people have been getting raped for decades and decades. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. And the thing that's wild is in a lot of cases, some of these companies, sure, maybe they'll move a little bit of stuff back here, right? Due to tariffs and other things. They'll move certain things back to the US. But, and there's a big fucking caveat, okay? In a lot of cases, these companies, they'll just tank the fucking tariff. They don't give a shit. Because again, unless the tariff is like fucking ridiculously massive, okay? Which is a massive risk. That is absurdly risky to do that. Especially if you don't have the means to replace what you're getting from another country. Okay? If you don't have the necessary components to be able to replace that, okay? That would drive up prices absurdly high. But in a lot of cases, if tariffs aren't substantial, then these companies will just tank it because guess what? It's still cheap labor. Even if they have to pay a tariff, it's still cheap labor. Okay? It's still cheap labor. That's what it is. It doesn't matter. And it's horrible. I don't it's just this situation. It's just this hole that there's no digging out of at this point. And unfortunately, either by the end of this decade or maybe the 2030s, I think heads are going to start to roll and it's going to start getting extremely fucking violent. Uh, because I think nobody wants to agree to disagree. I think people even don't want to agree. I've seen this where two people will agree on something 99% of something, right? On a topic, or they'll agree on 99% of things, but they obsess over the one thing they disagree on. Or in the case of a topic, if there's a small stipulation that they don't agree on. And people obsess over that. They obsess over the disagreement, over the negative, whatever. It's an obsession. And it's just sad because I maybe I'm delusional, but I don't think it used to be that way. But maybe everything was fake. Maybe everything was an act. Maybe people actually were that way, but they just didn't openly do that. I don't know. Maybe it was just a more passive aggressive thing. Now people are more blunt. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is. Um, but it's it's just why it's so disheartening because, and I don't debate people really. I don't. Not anymore, at least, because it for my sanity. Um, and I've learned that there's basically no point because, you know, you're not ever going to enlighten somebody else to a different viewpoint, even if they don't agree, because they don't care to hear your viewpoint and they don't care to acknowledge it. Um, and people don't want to learn different shit or learn new things, or they don't want to learn about something that maybe goes against what they think, right? People are so hell bent on being right about everything instead of learning from mistakes, or it's okay to be wrong on something. It's life. It's human. That's what being human is. You're going to be wrong on something. It's going to happen. There's no two ways around it. But it's just, I think it stems from, and it's just, I mean, I forgot to include, so like they've divided people by sex. They've divided people by, gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, creed, politics, hobbies, everything. It's just the manipulation is just, I think we're also living in a world where, unfortunately, I think sociopaths and narcissists have a very loud voice, and it's a little scary how many of them there are. Although I think I think unfortunately that sort of behavior does stem from some of the societal problems, and I think it's rooted in there. I think people are too willing to sort of believe that there's a silver bullet to solving everything, and often there's a lot of issues that are very deep rooted, and there's a lot of reasons why something happens. It's not just one reason. They think it's like pulling a vegetable out of the ground where there's one root, you just pull the root and it snaps and the vegetable comes out. It isn't like that. It's not that simple. It's not a just do this. That's just not how things are. There's just too much shit. And I'm not going to understand everything. And there's so much complexity to a lot of things. And there's stuff that I'm just out of my depth as well when I talk about it, right? Like there's stuff that I don't know fucking anything about, whether it comes to life or politics or any of this. But I don't want to take the black pill. I really don't. But I just can't help but feel that way. And I don't know. I don't think any antidepressant or any of these coping mechanisms are going to save me from that feeling, right? I don't think therapy's going to save me from that feeling. Um, I've given up on the housing market for the most part. I'm probably never going to own a house, and even if I wanted to, I'm gonna have to struggle for decades and decades to get a house that's probably at best as nice as my parents' house. Probably won't even be as nice. My parents' house, I think, is valued at around a little under 400,000 right now. I'll probably never get a house that nice. I've basically just accepted it. Um, and to me, I don't think it's even worth it really at this point. Having to spend decades slaving away to basically meet the same standard as my parents, um and then have to take out a mortgage that's, basically once I get a house, I have to live there till I die. There's no mobility in that case. uh I've given up on dating. I'll admit I haven't really gone out and tried to date people in person much. I asked out basically one girl I used to work with. She shot me down pretty quickly. uh Tried to date on dating apps. Struggled to match with people, and even when I did, they basically never gave me a chance. Didn't really matter what I did or said. I think dating is just really hollow at this point. Uh, and I've kind of given up on that as well. Kind of acknowledged that it's going to pretty much take a miracle for me to meet somebody. I'm just trying to again cope with that, and just kind of I've kind of had to adapt, like sort of adopt a form of like radical acceptance. And I know I shouldn't, but I just don't know what else to do. And I know I don't try hard enough at some of this stuff. I really don't, but I just don't see the point in giving everything you've got when the odds are it's not going to work out. Because, at least for me, giving everything you got and failing and getting crushed feels worse than having not tried at all. Maybe that's terrible, the terrible mentality. It probably is. And I think I am too risk averse. That is a flaw with my personality. I think I am too risk averse at times. Um, that's something I've not really been able to overcome. I think I'm so wrapped up in what ifs in a lot of cases. And I don't think my what ifs are inherently irrational or anything, but I think I let it control too much. But again, I think some personality flaws could be addressed through something like therapy, but even then, I think my general outlook on things, I just don't think that's going to be able to change. I don't think someone's going to be able to convince me. I feel very set kind of at this point in how I see a lot of stuff and how I see the world. And I think it's just too ingrained at this point. I think my mindset is too entrenched. And I don't even like I've tried to play devil's advocate and think of what of stuff that even somebody would tell me, but I just genuinely can't. I can't come up with it. I can't come up with what that would be. I've really I've really tried to, but I can't really see it. I've gone to therapy numerous times, but unfortunately, I can't really. I haven't been able to keep a therapist for that too long due to multiple reasons, and um, it's just when you're teetering over, when you feel like you're teetering over the abyss, and I don't even feel that way emotionally, but I just feel that way. I just feel that way when it comes to the world. Like I feel like we're all teetering over the abyss, kind of, except for certain groups of people. And at a certain point, when is the fall going to happen? Because I sense it's going to. I hope it isn't. I hope that's not the case, but I really do. But and I don't think there's any fixing it until that happens. But it's not going to be pretty when it does happen. It really isn't. And I don't want that to be the case, but push comes to shove, sometimes ugly things happen. And I think there's just a lack of rationality, and unfortunately, even trying to be rational is not accepted at this point. It feels. Uh, and nobody wants to interact with each other at this point. It's kind of like John Carpenter's The Thing, where basically everybody's paranoid of everybody else, and nobody knows who is infected, so everybody is basically terrified to even interact with each other. It's kind of the same thing. And there's just no community, family structure. I mean, it sounds horrible to say, but if I didn't have family, I would give up. I genuinely would. I would 100%. Because at this point, that's really all I got, and I don't have anything else. So, and what I have left, like in terms of other relationships, I know I can't build anything else. So if I lose it, and if I lose one, it's all gonna go. That's just how it's gonna be. And I know once that is gone, I'm not gonna be able to get it back. Maybe there's too much fear. Maybe it's blinding me a bit, but all right. Well, that's gonna be about all I've got. I could keep talking, but I've been going for almost an hour and 20 minutes, so at this point, I kind of prefer to call it. Um, trying to think if there's any last points. Yeah, I think I'll probably title this video "Being Black Pilled in 2026." I think that's probably fitting. Uh, yeah, I think that probably would work out. Not sure what the file size is going to be for this, but anyways, for anybody that did listen, which is probably nobody, but whatever. It's still good to just talk sometimes and vent a little. Whoever, if anybody listened, I appreciate it, but that's about it. So, adios.